Ringenes Herre med de fantastiske scenerier og special effects har vi efterhånden set omtalt på alle ledere og kanter i tv. Nu, efter at den ekstatiske premiere er lagt bag os, bringer vi jer et interview med 2 af special effects-folkene fra Weta, det newzealandske special effects firma, der tog sig af alle visuelle effekter i Ringenes Herre. Computerne stod tomme hos TRUEMAX i Valby, der til daglig underviser i 3D-animation, og som vi før har besøgt i Sprites. Denne gang havde de inviteret til en masterclass fra deres kursister, og vi fik mulighed for et kort interview med Ben og Warren inden deres 35 timers rejse tilbage til New Zealand.
Weta started 15 years ago in the back garage of Richard and Tanya's flat. They were doing jobs for commercials. They did masks and puppets for a spoof show. Spitting image type show. And from there it's grown to be probably the biggest effects company in operation at the moment in the world.
And Weta runs 5 departments, I think it is. They chose to take on 5 departments for Lord of the Rings. That was special makeup effects, so that was noses, ears, feet, creature prosthetics, gore and injury rigs, them losing heads, blood, guts, anything involved with that. The miniatures, which became bigatures, obviously, because they're so huge. What were the other ones? Armour, weapons.
And the creature design, obviously. Weta made 48,000 individual items for Lord of the Rings for all 3 films. Everything from a belt buckle to a full set of armour to a 16-metre across miniature, or as Warren said, a bigature. So we made a huge amount of product for the film.
Lumber spread. And look, what's that? More lumber spread.
I've heard, but I can't substantiate that all of the stuff that Weta made for Lord of the Rings cost the same amount as the T-Rex that Stan Winston built for Jurassic Park.
That's a big call.
It is a big call, and you may not want to quote me on that one, actually. But I've heard that. That's the price in New Zealand is very economical. And we got things done very economically. It was good.
Hurry!
Arbejdet med skuespillerne har givet Ben og Warren en masse unikke oplevelser med skuespillere, der brændte for deres roller. Mange af dem så landet for første gang.
Well, for a lot of them, they'd never heard of New Zealand before, or knew it was somewhere in the south of the Pacific or something, and we all wore grass skirts and lived in tin huts and stuff. They had no idea. So a lot of them arrived, and they spent 2 years living in New Zealand. I think Elijah Wood had 2 birthdays while he was over there. So it was a culture shock for them, as much as coming to grips with looking like a strange creature every day. But once they get into the swing of it, they know that they're going to be wearing oversized feet all day, and it becomes a point of humour. And I think John Rhys Davies found it hard 4 hours every morning having his whole face glued up in prosthetics. I think he probably struggled with it the most, and understandably, it's just to have something glued onto your face every day, just too much, I think. But they were all great.
I think Viggo was the best. I mean, from what I could see, he was such a method actor. From the first time that we met him, we knew that he was Aragorn, and he was Aragorn when he was at the workshop. Part, I think, of what you see of Aragorn is Viggo Mortensen. He's such a cool, calm, collected character. He used to actually carry around his sword at the beginning of filming, wrapped up in a blanket. And every now and again you'd see him wandering through town and he'd have this blanket and he knew what was in there. I'm sure if the police knew what he was carrying around, it would be a problem. But
I think, he'd take it back to the hotel with him, and he'd insist on, we had real steel swords made, and obviously they weigh quite a lot. So most of the actors would carry an aluminium and plastic sword double, but he would insist on wearing the real sword as often as possible, so he always had the weight on his hip and he felt like he was carrying the sword, and he'd practice drawing it, and just he became Aragorn. You can't imagine anyone else doing that role now. Is amazing. He's so dedicated.
I think another story too is Orlando Bloom, who played Legolas. From what I heard, he had never picked up a bow before, and the weapons master started to train him how to use a bow. And apparently the problem he had was actually just getting the arrow to nock to begin with, to get it behind the string. But quite quickly he got to the point where he was shooting clay birds out of the sky with an arrow. So he quickly became a master. And the weapons master said that he was a natural. He was just a natural with a bow. So great stories with the Iroquois, especially Lawrence, who played Lurtz, where the prosthetics techs would, after doing it over and over and over again, get a little bit bored with doing it. So they'd start to make fun of Lawrence, and they'd stick things up his nose, and they'd draw little eyebrows or glasses on him and stuff. And he'd wake up in the morning and there'd be a big drool hanging out of his mouth. So they'd go and get a little bit more, make up a little bit of liquid and put some stuff in it and make more drool and put a little blood on him and
take some photos, put lipstick on him. And so I mean, you've got to do something when you're spending 12 hours in that condition, you know. John Rhys Davies, he would be 4 hours every day getting his prosthetics put on. And the thing to appreciate is with prosthetics, they only work once. So every full face appliance that's made out of silicone that Gimli wears, they put it on one day, they take it off, they throw it away, and they put a new one on. So it's an incredibly huge part of the product list that Weta made. I think we made 18,000 pieces of prosthetics. New feet every day for the hobbits, new ear tips. Just a massive undertaking. Massive.
Amazing the process that resulted in the hobbit feet at the end. The first few hobbit feet that were designed and glued onto the hobbits looked more like flippers in the end, because when they'd walk, the toes would be so long they'd flap. So there was a process of design that happened even after prosthetics started to be produced. And in the end, what they actually did was stitch the toes together so the toes wouldn't flare. And they came up with a new product to actually produce what they needed to do is actually get almost a shoe sole rubber into it, so it was strong enough. They needed to walk over rocks, sharp volcanic rocks, through water. They needed to do all that and still come out the other end with a prosthetic that looks like a foot rather than a rubber shoe.